So for my project, I decided to ask, why are we ticklish? And I found out that when you're tickled, the part of your brain called the hypothalamus is triggered. The hypothalamus is the area of the brain that's in charge of one's emotional reactions as well as one's fight or flight responses, which actually relates back to the theory that being ticklish has evolved as a defense mechanism in order to protect vulnerable areas of your body and show submission. So when someone tickles you and you begin to laugh, it's not because you're having fun, but because you're having what's called an autonomic emotional response. The autonomic nervous system, together with the hypothalamus, regulates pulse, blood pressure, breathing, and arousal in response to emotional cues. So basically, the reason we're ticklish is because when someone tickles us, our pain and our touch receptors are triggered. And this, through the nervous system, sends an emotional cue up to the brain, which activates the hypothalamus, and we get what's called an autonomic emotional response, as I mentioned earlier. So while I was researching, I actually found out some pretty interesting things about the topic of being ticklish. So it turns out that even back in 350 BC, Aristotle actually wrote about being ticklish. And he believed that it was because humans are the only creatures that laugh and because of the fineness of our skin. Another thing I found out was that there's actually two types of tickles, which I didn't know. So it turns out the first is nismesis. And nismesis can be self-induced. And since this is self-induced, it's not really the tickling that we all think of. It's more like the feeling that you're itchy. The second is gargalesis, and gargalesis cannot be self-induced, and that's the more common type of tickling that we all think of when your mom or your dad, when you're little, comes at you with the tickle monster. That's that's a gargalesis, excuse me, and that's when you laugh and other people do it to you. The third thing I found out is you can't tickle yourself. And the reason why is because the areas of the brain that perceive tickles, including the cerebellum and the somatosensory cortex, can predict when you're going to tickle yourself. So it's impossible for you to tickle yourself because you know when it's coming. The fourth thing that I found out is that the areas that are the most ticklish are those that are most vulnerable to physical attack. This would include the underarms, waist, bottoms of the feet, and the stomach. The fifth thing that I found out was that babies don't develop laughter until they're around 4 months old, and they don't respond to tickling until they're around 6 months old with laughter. And I didn't know that, and I thought that was really interesting. So those were some other interesting things that I found out while I was researching this topic, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye! Say bye, Rue!